Hi, this is Mike Edelhart, and I'm here with another edition of Inception, our podcast and now kind of video cast about beginnings of new companies, new careers, new ideas in science, economics, and sometimes a little glimpse of the future. And I'm here today, I think I have to say, one of our more unique people who's leader of a portfolio company, Stella Smith. First, Stella, it's great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
So, well, let's start off with the basics. So, what's pirkx?
Sure. So pirkx essentially makes wellbeing benefits available to everybody, which is a fairly wide statement, but often large organizations provide a suite of benefits for their workers, whereas the workers within within smaller businesses or the self-employed workers don't necessarily have access. There's some 3.2 billion workers in the world. And looking at sort of source stats, only 9% of them have access to workplace wellness. And it's really important stuff. It's things like counsellors and doctors and the most basic of taking care that we're a human being and that we're well. If we're not well, then we're not here at all. So, the starting point. And what pirkx does is use technology to bring that together and allow us to get it to markets that historically some of the larger players haven't wanted to serve.
Got it. So how can you do this? So I have to presume that most workers don't have it because most employers have decided it's too expensive, it's irrelevant, it's dangerous, and in some way decided to avoid it. So what is it that you're doing here that makes the impossible possible?
Oh, absolutely. Well, do you know, pirkx started really because I owned a number of small businesses myself, and I had also worked in a large organization. So I knew that you could get these benefits, but I then went to try and source them as a small business in my own right, and I couldn't. So rather than it being the businesses making the decision not to have them, I think it's actually on the basis that they just weren't available. So they were either inaccessible because the large organizations that provide these kind of benefits didn't want to service the SME community, certainly didn't want to service the individual consumer, the individual human. Rather than it being the business. And then if you could find it, so when I looked in the market before building pirkx, then it was incredibly expensive. You were effectively priced out of being able to deliver it with the kind of budgets that you would have as a small business.
And so are you making it more affordable, more available by the way you source the underlying benefits so that it can be more of a cost efficient for folks? Or what is the specific change in pirkx that's made?
Exactly right. Yeah. So the first thing is if you have a human sales force, that arguably is far more costly than having a machine that does that for you, a piece of technology. So the first thing is we make it really easy to sign in and log up. The onboarding and offboarding journeys are all digital. At the top end, we still have very large organizations where there's a human element to our sales force, but that means it's cost effective for us to serve. The second piece is that if we, for example, in the UK, we have a 24/7 doctor's service, you can have as many appointments as you want. What we do is we aggregate together. So, there's a lot of workers that are accounted for. If you put together all of the SME workers in the world, all of the what they call contingent workers, so self-employed people, contract workers, gig economy workers, that's a big body of people. So what we do is effectively aggregate them together to allow us to attract better pricing from third-party suppliers. We'll either build it ourselves or we'll source it from a third party. If we source it from a third party, then we've got the purchasing power to get a better deal than you could get individually.
Got it. So you have sort of a unique background for our CEOs as well. So I guess in US terms, back in the day, you'd have been called a titan of Wall Street. What do they call them there? A titan of the city, a queen of the city? But you were a big financial deal in your day.
I certainly had a really cool financial services career. So my background is I was a really bright kid. Certainly having met you in person now, I'm not gonna. There's many more questions I've got for you, Mike, than telling my story. But in short, I was a very bright kid, but I was also incredibly naughty. So instead of going and doing as I was told and going to get my sort of A-level career, so the top end of formal education here and going to university, I didn't do that. I went clubbing, which is not particularly what my parents wanted me to do. I think they would have preferred that I'd have done my A-levels and gone to university. So I went and got myself a job in a bank, and then I went up through the ranks very quickly. So I was kind of, you know, the deputy to a treasurer in a small private bank by the time I was in my early 20s. I then went on to the big banks and went on to the trading floor. And I guess when the crash came in 2008-9, I was already a seasoned banker. So I watched and learned and experienced all of that sort of live on a financial markets floor. And then I sat at home for a couple of years, and I'm not lazy, and I'd been surrounded by Reuters and Bluebird screens for a long time. So I got away. I got rid of my television. I actually haven't had a television since 2010, and in doing so, I ended up building a number of small businesses, you know, through friends and family, and that's really where Perks began. Yeah, so it's an interesting career. And then I went back and I sat in a VC raising capital, and then I became a chief investment officer latterly in a financial services firm. So completely different, but I started building technology back in 2009-10 when it was, I would argue, well, I mean, your experience of building technology 20 years ago to building technology now, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, from a technology point of view, it's completely different. Back when I started, again, I'm so old. How old are you, Johnny? No, that my first computer programming was on a hand cranked octal computer. So you would literally type in a value, pull a crank to put the value into memory, type in another value, pull a crank to put it into memory, hit a button that represented a mathematical operation. So I go way back, and you know, a long time ago, everything had to be done by hand. When PCs first came out, if you didn't know the underlying hardware, nothing would work. And now you never touch the programmers, never touch the underlying hardware. Everything's gone way up to scripts and things like that. And now we have some portfolio companies where you're essentially listening to us talk. The AI would try and write code to produce an outcome like what we're talking about, so that nobody, you know, and it's an entirely different environment. And, you know, this was all about sort of, well, your Wallstreet or city sort of stuff. Let's make better transactions. Let's add numbers faster. And now we're talking about, let's help distressed people feel less distressed. Let's get information to folks so they can live better lives, which is a much more joyous and fulfilling activity than what I started with.
Absolutely. I mean, I sit in the same seat, Mike. I think I was very lucky in terms of my commercial corporate career. But I find myself now sitting almost as a split human being. You know, my job as a CEO and founder is still to make value for my shareholders and to build the company, make it scale. I mean, what a huge opportunity to take advantage of, and all of the disciplines that go with that, you know, running a tight ship and doing that good stuff. But then you get a story of a person, and they always use the word user case or user story. I don't like it because it's a human being, and you end up with a story of somebody who's, you know, ultimately we do doctors and counselors and physiotherapy, which helps people move or solve a space that they're in, and you realize that you changed someone's life that day. You know, and we have some, and what's more important, you know, and I think what the story behind Perks is that I think you can have both run in unison. And I hope that we end up proving that if you do the right thing and you take care of people and you have that, I mean, I know lots of the data stuff that we've spoken about historically, actually, if you've got that mission driven, people, human led, better outcome piece to your business, can you actually do better financially and commercially? And I'd love it for us to be a tangible demonstration of that in our future.
Yep, that's one reason why we invested, and we believe that. We believe that that's what impact is. Impact is touching and changing for the better in some way a lot of lives. Either big changes in a, you know, maybe a modest number of folks, or even small changes in a very large universe of folks. And if it's big changes in a large universe of folks, then that's the impact. Impact isn't some theoretical construct. I want to do impact. It's the sum total of trying to help the lives of people.
Absolutely. And what made you have that as your mission, just out of interest?
You know, frankly, it was research. I mean, it's an instinctual thing that one feels. In other words,
Absolutely.
you know, you have a choice. You could do something quotidian and boring, or you could do something emotionally satisfying and deep and human. Which would you choose? I mean, it's not going to be rocket science. But the reason we decided it was an appropriate thing for a fund to do was that all kinds of research started to show us several years ago that it was something that mattered a lot to people. I need to be in charge of me. I don't feel in charge of me. I feel like the world is taking me apart in little pieces, and I don't like it. I want control back, including control over myself, my surroundings. And when we looked around, it's like, well, it's clear this is what people want. And we started to get a sense of, but science is increasingly able to give it to them.
Yes.
And if breakthroughs in science can give people what they want, then we're on to something that's very potentially powerful, because people want what they want, and all value comes from the 8 billion people on the planet. So let's open ourselves up to that and see if by indicating we're open to that, and we think that way, entrepreneurs and others respond to us, or they start to look at us like we're crazy. And at the beginning, they did sort of look at us like we were crazy, but then very quickly we started to get the, you know, that kind of works for me. I get it. And now it's become quite accepted that health and happiness are tied together, and that science is driving it a lot. And there are all kinds of changes in food and experience, in how healthcare is delivered, that people are actively seeking and will eagerly latch onto once they realize it's possible.
Absolutely. I mean, look, every day I get to see in Perks. I get to see, you know, individual humans come back, and what Perks does actually improves their day or improves their month, or, you know, it may be that they just get some cash back on their shopping money and that helps their household. With over here, you know, we certainly have this cost of living crisis, and actually a few extra pounds in the pocket is helpful with the push on energy prices and everything. Others, you know, we've had people who haven't managed to get a diagnosis, and for £4.50, we charge only £4.50 in the UK per month, and you can cancel at any time. So we think we're trying to set the bar quite high. So we think that a consumer has to want to come back to us, rather than we force their feet to stay with us by way of contract. So,
Right.
you know, what an amazing thing to get up and do every morning. You know, we
can
feel
yeah, I can imagine. I get it. And just so folks have, there in the UK, there's a national health system, but the national health system is there to take care of you if you're sick.
Yes.
And is not designed to help you not be sick. It's sort of, it's backing you up in a way, which the US, we don't have. If you get sick in the US, it's like, well, I hope you got some money, because this is going to cost you. Not there, but wellness isn't really part of it.
No, look, the NHS is an amazing thing. Clearly there's some long waiting times and everything else, so access to some of the services we have are tremendously helpful and help shorten that waiting time, which of course is critical in certain areas. Where it's even more powerful is, you know, when we set up Perks, we kind of had the question of, how do you have a wellbeing platform that makes everyone healthier and happier? Because your version of well-being may be very different to mine. Right? I mean, I think I'm having a really good day if I put a fizzy vitamin C from the pharmacy in my water. Our FD is a 3-times UK kickboxing champion. So, I mean, certainly from a physical health perspective, a huge diversity. And, you know, depending on how old you are, where you live, what your culture is, what your values are, where you sit right now from an emotional perspective or a physical perspective is going to impact. So how on earth can we create a platform that solves it for everybody? And we didn't have the beautiful data points that I know you've got amazing access to data. What we did is we took it back to something very base, which is the dictionary definition, which is the state of being happy, healthy, or comfortable. And what we can work out with more data and more science and more understanding is what are the determinants of human health, what are the determinants of human happiness, what are the determinants of humans being more comfortable. And so what pirkx does is it kind of slices it up into channels. So we've got a very kind of Spotify, Netflix feel. It feels very consumer. It doesn't feel like a boring corporate employee benefits thing that sits on an intranet somewhere. I think that's powerful stuff. It means that we can actually cut down what is a large problem to solve and solve it practically and sensibly, but also encompass everybody, which was the whole intention, is that I had a number of people that I couldn't deliver what I was given. And if I worked in a large organization, I got a suite of benefits. Same human being move me to a smaller business to work in, and I can't get hold of those benefits, which just doesn't seem fair.
Right. No, it's not fair. But then again, lots of things in life are fair. So no. I've always seen you as kind of a battler. Somebody like Stella doesn't take stuff lying down and all that. But I see you. I think it's a boxing bag behind you. So do you actually turn around and clock that thing if you get frustrated during the day, or do you do? What's the story?
Once upon a time, I was far more physically healthy. I used to do boxing and swimming before I started work at a silly hour back in the day. If I'm honest, the confession is that I would love to do 15 minutes just to keep my, basically, Mike, the true story is I'm 44 years old now, and sometimes, the bit under your arms, I don't want that to go. So the idea was that I have it there and I could do 15 or 10 minutes just to keep myself going. In reality, what happens is my 4-year-old comes and pulls it really hard, flicks it back, it whacks me in the stomach, and that's pretty much all I have with the interaction. But yeah, I would love to have a go more on it, and it's there with the view that I will get to that at some point. But we're running so fast, making the time to stop and exercise or do something, I'm not always the best at. I should be better. What about you? Do you do exercise every day?
I do. You can't see it. It's sort of dark here because it's early in San Francisco, so I've got this kind of Vermeer light here. But if it were brighter, you can see there's a workout stick behind me, and this room is actually littered with workout gear. I'm a really big believer in use it or lose it at my age, so I'm kind of a crazed worker outer, and have a trainer guy who comes in through Zoom 4 or 5 times a week, and we work out here together. And San Francisco, because of the hills, is the land of 1,000 steps. So there's literally a street right down near where I live called Vulcan. The street is 250 stairs. There's no street. The street is a staircase. So going up and down that staircase can be a pretty good workout, and I do that kind of thing. Pretty often, as often as I can, anyway.
I mean, I'm a big fan of a walk. So in the pandemic, I sort of made myself go out and have a walk, because at one point we were confined to houses, and as we all were, and I've kept that up. I really love it, and some of the stuff I've had to learn my own day job, but arguably I wasn't the most healthy person, let's say, historically. And of course, when you're adding all these services and bringing them together, you kind of think, well, that sounds quite good. I'll give that a go.
Yeah, you're in the wellness business.
Right, exactly. and so no, and what a difference it makes. It's small, but it makes, sometimes it's the smallest things, or just those quiet moments, or that walk, or the 10 minutes with the 4-year-old playing with the boxing bag, that actually rebalance the mind. And you're busy as a founder, you're busy as a CEO, and there's a lot to juggle. So keeping that focus I think it's helpful, to take that step for 5 minutes and then to come back to the screen ready.
For me, it's essential. One of the habits I built up that I've most liked, and I lost it during the core of COVID, but back now is what I call walking meetings. So I'll do something like this, and then put the headphones on, and the next meeting will be while I'm walking from here to wherever the next face-to-face meeting is. So alternating that way, I compel myself to get out and move around during the day. So I'll do this kind of circle, pick part of San Francisco to walk through, walk from here down to the ferry plaza and then come back or whatever, doing physical meeting, walking meeting, physical meeting, walking meeting. And it makes for a much better day. I mean, to be out and about and getting all the stimulation and movement. And, I found days sitting here doing one Zoom after another utterly exhausting, way more exhausting than a set of physical meetings back to back would be. There's just something about the brain trying to fill in all the missing information that comes from flat interactions like this that I find just really tiring.
I think it's interesting. I think that there's a seismic shift in the way that we work. So, some people would have been really good at doing all those things that you just said before the pandemic, but I would argue that perhaps the majority would not. And I think that sort of acceleration, I would imagine we'd have all got there one day anyway, but the impact of the pandemic on that being okay at the other end, so you can be walking and talking, and the recipient of your call is absolutely comfortable with you walking and talking. In fact, it probably inspires them to say, do you know what, I need to take a break now, I'll walk and talk with you. And I think that's not much comes good from a pandemic, but actually arguably does it. There are some things or behaviors that we've picked up that we've had forced upon us, and that acceleration, I mean, obviously it's helped our business because we can go faster because we're more efficient.
Yeah, I think so. And from the venture point of view, to get a little inside baseball, if I often use them for first meetings, for introductory meetings. And one of the interesting things about it is many times the entrepreneur is all geared up, got the deck, got everything. And I come on and say, well, I'm walking down the middle of the street and I can't look at your deck. Why don't you just talk to me for 20 minutes? And right away, I get a sense of how that individual deals with the unexpected. Because some handle it really well and some are really flustered. It's like, but I have the deck. I'm like, yeah, but if I watch the deck, I'm going to trip over a tree root, and that's not good. So it actually can be helpful. We have, when we're actually in the same place, talk for hours. We could talk for hours, but in this format, we can't talk for hours. So we probably should just wrap it here. Otherwise, we'll be going on, and folks will get tired of us. So last question. So what's the next key thing that's going to happen for you and for Perks, either or both?
Well, I think me and Perks are inextricably linked these days. So in terms of Perks, we've just closed our funding round, which of course you're part of. So that means a big shift in being able to achieve our plans. So it means that we've had 7 new hires arrive last week. There's another 4 coming in the next 2 weeks for a team of 8 or 9. That's a big change. And it means that we can start to deliver the big things that we want to deliver in terms of technology. So we've got 2 really big key projects. And what that should allow us to do is have one technology stack that services each of the countries. So we've already launched in Australia. So we've been working with AWS and Deloitte and others, looking at how we can get our stack to operate in a way that gives us fleet of foot. We know the problem is global. How can we build a piece of technology that we can quickly move and assimilate in different countries, obviously with different ingredients and everything else. So that should be done in the next 6 months. We're also looking at how we have an amazing product. We know from the customers loving it and from the feedback we get, how do we make big steps to get that scale so that people know about it? So again, pulling together all the marketing and PR and everything else that we've never been able to afford to have historically, because budget only goes so far when you're in startup land before you hit this stage of the cycle. So lots of interesting stuff, very structured business plan. Perks is not a difficult business plan to execute. It's about a lot of things that need to be done, and they need to be done in the right order. But I'm quite excited by the the technology that's coming, and then onward it's about we're going to build out the team in Australia a bit more, and we're going to tackle South Africa as well, which is an interesting choice. We could just focus on deepening our lovely existing relationships. I've got lots of customers already here in the UK. It's growing in Australia, but I really want to be able to test, in a country with different infrastructure to the UK, and different audience, different landscape in terms of existing benefits, and how the healthcare, as you said, different between the States and the UK, how it operates. Can we actually do something? And I think we're going to be able to get very affordable, very meaningful benefits into certain parts of South Africa where it doesn't exist, and I hope that we do a good job with that. So all very exciting indeed.
Can't wait to see how it all comes out. So same time next year, as they say, let's take another look and see how it's all played out between now and then.
Well, thank you as ever for all your advice and counsel, and all the support. And I can't wait.
Same here. Thanks. Talk soon.
Thank you, Mike. Bye.